Because again, we don't often challenge our belief systems about what it is that we truly believe and are doing. So if we understand what our values are and who we want to be working with, because nobody wants to work with people who are, we call it in Australia no dickhead policy. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on your brand, but
Yeah.
we want to work with people we like. We don't want to, go to work every day and go, oh, is that guy coming in today? Or, so
Yeah.
attracting like people is really important. And I think we need to understand our own values to be able to do that.
Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry's seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about
Yes.
your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hirsch Redmond.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
Who's in the hot seat today on Yes Brand? It's Amanda Cassar. She's a financial advisor based in Australia's Gold Coast. She holds a Master of Finance and Planning with specialist accreditations in aged care, self-managed superannuation funds, which are retirement and pension savings funds, estate planning and succession. She has a particular interest in financial abuse and is the course writer of the Financial Abuse Specialist Accreditation, globally distributed by Standards International UK. Amanda is also part of a family business with her 2 adult children employed in the business, and she's currently building her 4th home and loves resting up in her hinterland hideaway with the chickens, koalas, and kangaroos, who she will be visiting very soon for the holidays. Welcome, Amanda.
Thanks so much for having me, Hirsch.
It's great to have you. When we spoke previously, I think I had mentioned that, I was interested in this concept of abuse, protecting against abuse, financial abuse. It's something that, we don't hear about probably as often as we should. How did that come to be an area of interest for you?
A few years ago, like many people, I wanted to write a book, and I didn't want it to be about how to do a budget like many financial advisors do. I wanted to understand better people's money stories and what motivates them to make the decisions that they have. And, one of the questions I asked most people was, what did your parents teach you about money? And the answer was usually a resounding nothing.
Nothing.
But there's always those, I guess the unwritten stories like, money doesn't grow on trees, or, we have to tighten our belt. So there's always those things we grow up hearing. And one lady's experience was extraordinary, that every time they drove past a beautiful home, her father would say something like, they must be really bad people in there, because only really bad people ever get ahead in life. So she had this mindset from a young girl that only the people who were prepared to break the law would get ahead. And she ended up in a very abusive marriage, and her story just fascinated me. And it was something I hadn't heard a lot of. And I thought, how have I been in finance for over 20 years and really don't know much about this coercive control, financial abuse, people taking advantage? And that was what ended up setting me down the rabbit hole to find out so much more about financial abuse and discover that, it's the easiest way to control someone. And over
Yeah.
95% of cases of domestic violence also feature financial abuse.
Well, it's fascinating to me. It's interesting because I asked you about it because it interests me, not because I felt I had a connection to it, but on a certain level, I resonate with that notion of growing up, that with the idea that people of immense wealth must be bad people or doing something wrong. It was much less pronounced in my experience. My dad was an attorney and had tremendous integrity as an attorney. And I always just got the sense from him that a lot of attorneys didn't have the same integrity. He wasn't a criminal attorney. He was a trust and estates attorney, but I felt like there was a disconnect for me between financial material success and integrity if you got beyond a certain point. And I was curious to get your thoughts on, now that you've kind of been immersed in a lot of the manipulations and other things, where do you shake out on that psychology that many of us have about good and bad versus wealth and, less means or something?
Well, it's actually all pervasive across every class of person. I've traveled in Africa with the Hunger Project and, been around women who break rocks for a living and earn less than $2 a day. And when the husband left, he sold the family mattress and her cooking pots. So financial abuse comes from the lowest means. There's people on Social Security over here who, often they're expecting a compensation payout right through. We know we've got the celebrity stories of Britney being coercively controlled. Mickey Rooney
Sure.
was a pin-up boy for elder abuse. Obviously, it would make more sense if you're going to be financially abusive to target someone with great wealth because you'll probably get a better payday. But it actually carries across all stratas of society. There's nobody that gets left out when it comes
Yeah.
to financial abuse.
Yeah. And do you find that it takes us does it take a certain type of person to commit these abuses? Like what kind of person, you know what I mean? Like how do you
Yeah.
like what is it? What is
There's
you can
the
say what's
traits
wrong with
that
them, but
and look, I'll say the traits from many women I've spoken to, and please don't think I'm generalizing, it does happen to men as well, financial
sure.
abuse. Often very narcissistic people. Everything's all about them. They're the center of the universe. Everything should be about them. You should be, funding my lifestyle. So, it's a very controlling thing to do to another human being. So I guess it's people with those tendencies who are very much self-centered, all about funding their own needs and to hell with anybody else's, and just constantly putting themselves first instead of, I suppose, that loving relationship where you have joint goals that you both want to work towards. You're trying to achieve something together. It's just very much everything's about me.
Right. Well, let's look at it from the other side, from the side of, okay, someone is young or not so young, but they're trying to take a very proactive and responsible role in their own finances. What are some tips, some good advice for people as they try to, construct an independent and self-supervising role?
I think one of the biggest things is not to lose yourself in a relationship. Obviously, at the start, everything's, beautiful and you want to spend the rest of your life and it's lovely and you've got the rose-colored glasses. But quite often it's the best weapon that these people have for controlling because you always want to go back to that time when everything was so beautiful. So maintaining some sort of independence, as in both of you always have your own bank accounts that, your wages are paid into or anything like that, any income, but perhaps work out, okay, as the relationship goes forward, is it going to be a 50-50 split? Or is someone making much more money and is prepared to go two-thirds, one-third? What will it be in your relationship? And maybe have a joint account then that you both contribute, whether it's a percentage of the bills or a percentage of your wages, that goes in to cover everything between you. The worst thing most people in financially abusive cases have said is that they had no access to funds. They couldn't flee. They were forced to stay because of the finances. They didn't know where they could get another dollar from. The lady I spoke to at the start managed to be able to skim $20 a week off the groceries to buy a grocery card, which she hid at her girlfriend's house so that when she could leave, she'd have some money for food for her and her daughter when she finally left. So I think maintaining some sort of financial independence is really, really important. And we're hearing the need more and more and more for binding financial agreements, which can be done, we used to call them a prenup before a
Yeah.
relationship commences, but they can actually be taken out at any time. So if you analyze, your family's wealth, we're up to this world's biggest transfer of wealth ever. Are your parents substantially better off? And are you going to be inheriting a lot more than your partner will in future? Or, is there life insurance policies that, could come your way that alter things? There's so many things to consider that, is it what's yours is mine and what's mine's mine? Or is it, much more what I bring to the relationship and what you bring to the relationship? Especially as people are commencing, their second and third long-term relationships. They may have children from those relationships they'd like to protect as well, who, if everything goes to the new partner and their children, yours could miss out entirely. So I think the stigma around the B F As really needs to disappear, and they're used as a really smart family protection tool going forward.
Yeah, that's a very good point in that a lot of it, it sounds, has to do with just comfort with the conversation, just being comfortable asserting your rights and just to avoid, even in the best of circumstances, confusion or what I tend to see is there are some people that are comfortable looking out for themselves and others that aren't, and the ones that aren't sometimes are victimized de facto. It's like they're not necessarily their partner is trying to screw them over, but they're just they don't have that mechanism in their D N A to kind of look out for themselves.
I think also, like, if you can't be comfortable having a situation about money with this person before you even commit, how much more difficult will it be to have it down the track? So I know one person who used it actually as a tool to weed out a potential partner. They had the discussion, and the partner absolutely refused to entertain the idea, or it was very much, I want to protect what's mine, and I also want, a good piece of yours as well. So it was used as a tool to say, you know what, this isn't what I want in future. I think let's call it now before we go down this path where we want different things. So it can be a powerful way of, working out where you're both coming from, because we don't often have those conversations. What did your parents teach you about money growing up? What did yours teach you? What beliefs do you have about money? We don't often know because we've never sat there and thought, oh, I'm a bit of a hoarder, or I'm a bit of a spender, or, I like to have a good time, or no, I want experiences. No, I like stuff. So there's sort of conversations that aren't easy to have because we're not used to having them.
Yeah.
It's a whole new world.
Yeah. I mean, and in my cases, when I was very young, I didn't want to have the conversations at all. And it's funny to say this, but I think it's true. I hoped it wouldn't be an issue or it wouldn't come up. That there'd be plenty, there'd be enough, do well enough, and then you don't have to have the conversations. But that's obviously very foolish and naive. One question I wanted to ask you, speaking about relationships, all about relationships, you have two children that work with you in the family business. So what about that? What about working with family as a family?
Can't say it's easy. I'd
Yeah.
love to. I've actually had to bring in some specialists at different times to navigate. My children have never been super close or gotten on well together. My son's the oldest. He's an advisor in my business, and my daughter, 22 months younger, and does a lot of administration for me in the business. But because of their very different ideas, not upbringing, we've had to have, call a timeout and bring in a family business specialist to guide us through at different stages, because it's not an easy thing. Even when you have been brought up by the same people, you don't always have the same ideas. So that's been a fascinating, yeah,
But what was
experience to navigate.
yeah, but what was the thinking in terms of creating that situation where they are involved? In other words, I know people who have a family business even, but their children aren't in the business, you know?
Well, at high school, I said to both my children, Mum has a business. If you're interested, we can have a chat about what subjects would best fit if you'd like to become involved. And they both turned around and went, we are not ever working with you. No way. We're not doing that. So my son went off to become a car mechanic and got through halfway through his apprenticeship. And my daughter, like many young girls on the Gold Coast, wanted to be a makeup artist. And so she went off and did her diploma in that as well. And obviously makeup's a difficult job. It's very sporadic. So she thought she'd do a bit of admin for me to fill in while she was looking for more work.
Uh-huh.
And my son decided one day, look, I'm going to be 50 and still earning 50 grand a year and coming home filthy every single day. And unless I own a shop, there's probably not a lot of room for progression. So, is this something I really want as a long-term career? And I was really hopeful, being halfway through his apprenticeship, he'd finish that. But he's like, oh, well, could I start doing my studies anyway? And I said, well, I don't mind, but I'd still like you to finish and have a trade you could always fall back on. And of course, the next morning I get a phone call at 7:30, like, oh, what are you doing, mum? Like, putting my makeup on like I do every morning. It's like, oh, I've just been made redundant. I'm on my way home. And I'm like, yeah, you so knew that was coming.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I got played.
Surprise. Surprise.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
the
have a
bank of
tendency
mum.
we have a tendency to do that as kids, and our
Absolutely.
kids do that and say, well, what would you think if I did this? Well, guess what? I did this. I
We've
just
now
want to get
even
your advice. I want to get your thoughts before I tell you that it
before I
happened.
tell you it's a fait
Yeah.
accompli. Yeah.
So so you're in the position though of being a leader of a business, and what tips can you give listeners about leadership?
Oh, my leadership lessons started. I was invited to go on leadership and immersion programs with the Hunger Project and learn leadership from the poorest people on earth, which was my trips to Uganda, Malawi, and India, which give you a smashing good dose of perspective. Because I mean, it's the last place you'd expect to look for
Yeah.
leadership, on these people learning, nothing. And it was a great lesson in humility and mostly mindset. I think when someone comes along and goes, look, we're not going to fix you, but we've got this opportunity for you. And if you embrace it, you might be able to change how you live. And I mean, that's a gift that most of us would look at and go, oh, but I've got to work hard at it. Or can't you just give me the handout and I'll figure out what to do with it? So I think that first gift of being able to embrace an opportunity that comes our way, even if it means hard work, is something that we're not good at recognizing and taking on. We do want it to be easy. We do want the handout or the inheritance or the lump sum or the lottery win. So learning about a mindset shift and going, you know what, if it does take a bit of hard work, what's the outcome? And, for these people who've taken that mindset that I will have a different outcome, it's, impacted them personally, their families, their communities into, no longer being underneath the poverty line, that they can make ends meet. They've been able to be shown the tools to forge a different and better life. And the tools are the same, whether you live, in a village in Malawi or, you're seeing your financial advisor. You have to have that vision for what you want to achieve, be committed to achieving it, and then take the actions to make it happen. So Hunger Project calls it their VCA, or their Vision Commitment and Action Program. And I think it's universal. It doesn't just guide a fabulous nonprofit. It's exactly what, people who want to achieve things do.
And you've done a few of these trips with the Hunger Project, 3 trips at least, would you
Yeah,
know,
that was the Uganda, Malawi, and India
and
to see how
India.
that works.
And so what spurred your interest in that to begin with?
Well, I'm part of the largest networking group in Australia for women in business called Business Chicks, and they would partner with the Hunger Project for these programs. And I'd sit back at these events, and they'd do the lovely montage of videos, and I got to meet some of the ladies who went and thought they were all just a little bit fabulous. And the CEO of the company just said to me at a launch one day, she's like, "Why don't you do it?" And I'm like, oh, I'm busy. I've got kids. I run a business. I can't. I don't know how to fundraise. I've never done that before. Every excuse under the
Yeah.
sun, like, and until one day I just sort of went, hmm, why don't I? My idea of fundraising before that had been, I gave to the Surf Lifesaving Club when they knock on your car door window at a stoplight, or, you give your old clothes to a charity bin. So it wasn't something that was part of my D N A or I was super familiar with, but it was one of those opportunities where I just said yes and tried to figure it out later. So
Yeah.
it was one of those leap of faith moments where I think you're not quite sure how this is going to play out or what's going to happen. It was a brilliant experience to say yes to. And I guess I loved the first one so much. I just kept going back because I thought it was so fabulous. And I suppose it's like anything, you get more out of it than you put in. And so that becomes, such a fabulous learning tool that you just like, yeah, this is incredible.
And what's on the horizon now? Are there more mountains to climb? What has got your kind of ambition lit up
At the
now?
moment.
Yeah.
I've actually been sharing the experiences I've had through public speaking, which, is another mountain to climb.
Yeah.
So the lessons I've learned from the Hunger Project and how I've incorporated them into my life and my business has been the next big thing for me. So yeah, sharing how it's impacted me and, lessons and takeaways. So I was privileged to be able to speak in Hawaii this year to the $1 Million Roundtable audience about that and the takeaways I'd learned from the Hunger Project and the people I'd met.
That's wonderful. I'm going to impose upon you for one more piece of advice. For people who are kind of in charge of their own brand, they've got their own company, they've got their own mission, but they're looking after their own brand. They're building it. Do you have any advice to someone who's built a practice, built a business when it comes to getting the word out or imprinting the uniqueness of your brand with your target audience?
I think sitting down and working out your key values as a business, that was vital for us when we wanted to move the brand forward and involving everybody in the business to work out. I mean, you might sit there and think, look, I'm all about integrity. And, there's people three, layers down from you who are going, yeah, you don't exactly embody that to me. So involving all your stakeholders and going, what is it we're all about? Is it family and community and understanding that? Because if that's flowing through your entire team and resonating with the people who are going, oh yeah, this is the brand for me. They do have the values that I love. Family's obviously one of ours. It's really important. And families, love that they can ring up and go, is mum there? Or whereas other people might not like that. If, you've got a law firm, you might want, senior partner Bill rather than put mum on the phone. So you're going to attract people who love what you're doing. And I think that's really important to understand that, because again, we don't often challenge our belief systems about what it is that we truly believe and are doing. So if we understand what our values are and who we want to be working with, because nobody wants to work with people who are, we call it in Australia no dickhead policy. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on your brand, but
Yeah.
we want to work with people we like. We don't want to, go to work every day and go, oh, is that guy coming in today? Or, so attracting like people is really important. And I think we need to understand our own values to be able to do that.
It's fantastic. Well, let the audience know where they can find you, because we'll include it in the show notes, but sometimes people are just listening and want to
Sure.
look something up.
I am all over social. So LinkedIn, I am Amanda Cassar. In America, you have a yoga teacher, Amanda Cassar. I'm not her. I'm not that flexible. So financial advisor, Amanda Cassar. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter, or X now, as Finance Chicks. So yeah, please reach out. I'd love to hear from you. And look, if you've got a financial abuse survivor story, victim story that's come good for you, or you're in the middle of it, please reach out. I'd love to hear your story.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and
it worked for you,
yes, then
subscribe and leave a
yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes, friend.
Get your branding on
Yes.
before they're gone.
Yes.